It's HBR, All Things Considered, and I'm Dave Lawrence. Today we are welcoming back our friend Peter Rowan, who is tonight at the Doris Duke Theater, tomorrow at the MAC, and he joins us right now. Hey, Peter, welcome back. Good to have you on the show.
Nice to be here, man. Thanks, Dave.
You are quite welcome. And what's in store? If you can, paint a little picture, who you're bringing and what kind of flavors we can expect.
Decided to bite the bullet and try and make a record that reflected kind of the bluegrass roots and the Hawaiian roots of bluegrass, which are considerable in that the Hawaiian string bands toured on the mainland for years and years and formed the basis for a lot of the string band projects that turned into bluegrass here. But I'll have Doug Tolentino playing ukuleles and singing, and Jeff Ahoy of the steel guitar, singing and playing steel guitar. And they're the players that recorded with me on my CD called My Aloha.
Take us back to growing up in Massachusetts, and how your uncle really brought music to you at a young age, and we sort of owe him a big thank you because all these years later, we're here enjoying it.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. This is the full circle story. The first music I heard, I was 4 years old, and my Uncle Jimmy came back from the South Pacific, World War II. He'd been in New Caledonia, but he had disembarked in Honolulu. And he came back, and he was playing a Martin baritone ukulele. So I started learning songs from him. I mean, he just fascinated me completely. He had this one song, I want to go back to my little grass shack, of course, in Kealakekua, Hawaii. So that's where I first started learning, and the baritone uke was my first instrument. When I was recording in Honolulu, I was speaking with Doug and Jeff, and I said, I didn't even know if this is a song. I said, but this is what my uncle used to say, hubba hubba ding ding. I mean. My buddies there just fell out because they said, yeah, that is totally like what the guys in the Navy would be talking about, going to the Hubba Hubba bar down in Chinatown.
Prostitute bars.
And I think it was an expression before the bar even opened. But it's that international thing, you know. Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like a good song, and it ended up being a song. So, yeah. Hubba hubba ding ding.
That was a scene for a lot of people who don't know where you were growing up was a very powerful scene. It became a big one. Beatniks, the folk scene. It would have the punk scene later. A lot of really important musical scenes came from there. But dialing in on your particular one, memories of the Boston club scene from the 1950s.
I had a little rock and roll band called the Cupids, and we would go out and play shows for the kids, you know, sock hops. The show would begin at 6 and end at 9. After that, we'd be driving back, and we heard about this Harvard Square music scene. It was a juxtaposition at that time, of a bunch of old-time music enthusiasts, and the jazz musicians who played across town at the Jazz Workshop would hang out over there in the coffee houses. You know, as a young kid, you could get into the coffee houses without being 21 years old and hear these guys warming up on their saxophones and conga drums, and they're heading over to play with Miles Davis over across town. It was a very heady and exciting atmosphere, just ears opening wide to everything. I started playing there early on. That was the one place where there was authentic bluegrass music happening every night of the week.
And what a scene, though. You mentioned some of the other stuff, the Jazz Workshop, Paul's Mall, all these legendary venues, and the Tea Party, obviously. I mean, it was really
that was the psychedelic era.
I mean, capsulizing many of the different scenes from that general time frame, just because...
Yeah, they all connected, too, yeah.
Right, they all sort of connected. And you were 21 years old when you started. Founding father of bluegrass, Bill Monroe.
We call him the father of bluegrass music because he spawned so many bands that copied him, with the banjo, fiddle, mandolin, guitar, and bass, and the slide guitar, too, which is a definite direct Hawaiian influence. But Monroe, he had a huge hit with Blue Moon of Kentucky on his own, and then Elvis recorded it, and it was a hit again. I remember hearing a reporter ask Bill if Bill didn't think that Elvis had kind of degraded Blue Moon of Kentucky by making it rock and roll. And Bill Monroe didn't miss a beat. He said, "No, sir, them were powerful checks."
Exactly. Right.
That's the things people don't know about Bill Monroe is he was the only country music act that had a man of color. D. Ford Bailey played harmonica. He played in Bill Monroe's band and traveled with the Bluegrass Boys. So Bill had an interracial band early on in the segregated South. Bill, in his tent show, he had a separate trailer for the horse, King Wilkie, because he would ride out the beginning of the show on the horse. Bill was on such a roll that in the late 40s and early 50s, he had the Everly Brothers opening for him. And another person people don't know about was the young Ray Charles. They carried Ray's piano in a truck, and Ray was one of the opening acts in Bill's tent show. This was when Ray was just starting out. In the early 50s, Ray had decided to go on his own and make records that weren't gospel records, and he traveled with Bill Monroe. And it's not enough time to tell the full story, but
Sure.
The Bluegrass Boys came through Las Vegas, and Ray was playing. As they're driving through town, they mentioned, "Oh, Ray's playing here." And Bill said, "I'd like to see old Ray." And they went to the show, and after the show, Bill was walking down the hallway behind stage, and Ray Charles, with his handlers, was coming the other direction. And Bill took off his hat, and he sang, "Blue Moon of Kentucky, Keep on Shining." And Ray ran down the hall and embraced Bill and said,
Wow.
I'd never forget that voice, ever.
That's a beautiful story. All right, well, just two more, because I don't want to milk you dry before your visit gets underway, because we got to keep you in good storytelling shape on the stage. So just two more. One is the ensemble Olden in the Way included, among others, Grateful Dead's Jerry Garcia, David Grisman. Can you share the story of that group coming together and your role in there?
Yeah, we were living out on the last bit of coast before Hawaii, Stinson Beach, California, north from San Francisco. Just like Haleiwa in the old days. And Jerry Garcia was living just up the hill. And it was only a moment in time. I think it was over about a 2-year period that we started playing and played live for a year and a half. And then it was gone because Jerry was moving into such a larger orbit with the Grateful Dead. But you couldn't sell bluegrass at all unless you were on the Grand Ole Opry, and that roster was full. But Jerry started out playing the banjo, and Grisman told me that, hey, Garcia lives up the hill. Why don't we go up? He loves to play bluegrass. So we went up there and we started playing, and we ended up just playing every night. And then after about maybe 6 months, we kind of coalesced and we agreed to go out and play some dates. And the thing is that bluegrass is mostly outdoors and festivals. And Jerry was allergic to the dust that would inevitably just be all stirred up by people dancing around the stage and everything. And the Grateful Dead, were a huge organization. But it was a beautiful time, and the enigmatic and the charismatic Jerry Garcia really graced us with his blessing. Without Jerry, we wouldn't have seen the light of day as easily as we did at that time. I remember the first show we did with Garcia, he stepped up to take a solo, and he looked down at the banjo for the volume knob. And there weren't none.
As a final note, and I guess we got to mention it because I'm going to play it as we go out, one of the classic songs that people certainly, I guess it depends on how old you are and the kinds of stuff that you're into, but for me, when I was a little boy, Panama Red was kind of a humorous song, a fun song. Certainly those hippie DJs on WMMR in Philadelphia were the ones I would credit with introducing me to it. And it comes back to you. Share a little bit of its creation.
It's unusual because I wrote that song. It was on the week after Woodstock, which I did not attend, but there was such a vibe going on. It was in the Northeast, and I had left my band that Dave Grisman and I had called Earth Opera, and I chose to play out on the street. I wanted to connect with people. Any kind of showbiz enterprise takes you into a very strange realm. So I started playing out on the streets, and Panama Red came from interacting with people on the streets. And it also came from Panama Red. the imaginative stimulus, because back in those days, it was the jazz musicians who would say, hey, try this, kid. It was that combination of fun, that humorous kind of a thing, that mysterious personage of the era, Panama Red, of the era, I'm sure we've all known. Haven't you known many, or a few anyway, Panama Reds? I've known a bunch. Panama Reds about that, yeah.
You got a good way of describing it. It's Peter Rowan, and he's tonight at the Doris Duke Theater, Honolulu Museum of Art, tomorrow at the MAC on Maui. Grammy Award-winning musician. Appreciate you being on the show. Hope you had fun today, Peter.
Thanks, Dave. It was really fun. Thanks. I appreciate it. We'll see you, folks. Aloha. It is Peter Rowan talking to you, and you're tuned to my good friend David Lawrence. Thanks, Dave.